Okay, so I don't know if I've ever told you guys this before, but I am an accountant. And while for some this may be hard to believe considering that I still use a calculator when calculating the tip at a restaurant, and by a calculator I mean my computer science friends, I did in fact get my master's and my bachelor's in accounting at a top 20 business school, and my first adult job out of college was in the Big Four. Can you guess which one? Can you guess? Can you guess which one? I say my first job because after about 2 years of being an auditor in public accounting, I decided to run away from my plantation and take a job in corporate accounting, which is where I am now. The decision to go into the Big Four is a life-changing decision for any student coming out of university, but I think it's even more contentious and life-changing for a student of color, especially a black student. And while you shouldn't strictly listen to just some sexy man on the internet, nor your family or your friends about such an important career decision in your life, I'm hoping today by sharing my experience with my time at KPMG and in Big Four public accounting, I can give you some insight or at least my experience so you can use it to decide whether or not you think that this is the career for you. First, yes, I know what you want. If you saw the title of the video, you really just wanted a straight answer. Should you go Big Four out of university? Yes, it is, but I urge you to watch the rest of the video to just consider a couple of things. Hey, that's Tayo, this is Colormind, and let's talk. The first thing to really consider about public accounting and the Big Four in general is that if you are a black accountant, it's going to be lonely. And I want to start off with that because I think in order to have this conversation, we should look numerically and at the data about the anomaly of the black accountant. Question: how many black CPAs do you think work in the Big Four? Well, the representation is immaterial. I'm sorry, my watch time just tanked. Just fucking tanked. Roughly 9% of the 2 million accountants and auditors in the US are black, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In comparison, about 13% of the nation is black. But the number of black accountants gets even smaller once we start looking at the next level being a CPA or a certified public accountant, which is really when you start making money as an accountant. Out of the 650,000 certified public accountants in America, only 5,000 were black, according to the National Association of Black Accountants, or NABA. And what that data kind of shows me is that, while you may be able to say there's a little bit of representation of black accountants like tax preparers and bookkeepers, there's almost no representation for black accountancy at the highest level, or at least at the level in which you're making white collar money. Because if you're here, you probably are interested in a career in accounting, and you understand that until you get your CPA, you're kind of not making that much money. Like, your CPA really opens up your net worth vastly, which could really be a life changer for a lot of black and African diasporic families. But what's even more interesting is this wrinkle. At the public accounting level, at the Big Four level, minority representation is heavily recruited, and I can attest to that firsthand. It is really part of their funnel. Firms like EY, KPMG, PwC, and Deloitte do go out of their way to make programs to make sure that professionals and graduates of color have a chance or have a pipeline into getting to public accounting, into getting into their firms. And they work because I was part of those programs and I got an offer. What this actually shows is that at the end of the day, you can't brute force your way out of being alienated. It's not glamorous or empowering to be the only black intern in your class. It's not empowering to be the only black associate on your 10-man team. It's alienating, it's isolating. Here's a picture of me when I went to national onboarding a couple years back when I first started the company. These are almost all the black people that were at that orientation out of a recruitment class of, I want to say, about 8,000 to 10,000. And these were from all over the country. While this looks like squad goals here, and every time I look at it, I think about how hopeful we all were at that time. A couple were from Atlanta, a couple were from Chicago. I was stationed in Arlington. We weren't gonna see each other after that week. And it showed, because when we went back, we often found that we were the only Black people on our teams. At times, we were the only Black people in our office, and that really does impact you. And as a result, what the data shows is that at every level of career advancement, you see less and less Black accountants. A 2017 American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, or the AICPA, demographic report showed that Black accountants made up about 9% of bachelor level programs, but they only made up about 4% of new hires. And then once we got to CPAs employed by public accounting firms, it was just 1%. Just 1% of Black CPAs were employed at Big Four or public accounting firms. And that was in 2017, and honestly, it hasn't changed that much in 2020 or 2021. And this is not to say that you won't, or that I didn't make friends in my office. I made great friends at my firm. It was a fine work environment as far as like race relations, I guess, but there is a heaviness that you feel that even I wasn't expecting, of what happens when you come into an environment every day and you simply just don't see yourself exist. I had no idea how disconcerting or sort of isolating it was to walk into rooms day in and day out and like not interact or not see another Black person all week, and then expect to be in this family for 3 to 5 years. So it is something to consider. 2, you have to entertain the fact that public accounting may not be for you. Working in the Big Four definitely rewards a certain type of individual. And a lot of people start their career in Big Four just to see if they can do it. You know, you go there, a lot of people find out they can't or they don't want to, and then oh Lord. Oh God. Oh. That's the T. You have to entertain the possibility that maybe public accounting won't be for you, which is what a lot of, I would even say the majority of people that go into public accounting find out, which is why I think you should still try it. What I noticed is that the type of manager or senior that really seemed to excel at this job had the same 3 traits in common. And if you identify with these traits, I think you actually will have, fun is a word, but you will be successful, or you will readily kind of take to the work environment that a Big Four company sort of entails. The 3 qualities that I observed, and they could be different, but these are just what I observed, are: 1, you like puzzles and you identify with puzzles for puzzles' sake. 2, you're hyper competitive. And 3, no shade, but you don't have a bunch of hobbies. The nature of our work, especially in auditing, when like you're constantly trying to find things and verify things, my managers and my seniors who weren't as burnt out seemed to be people that would always say, oh, I love answering riddles, or I love just being in the weeds trying to figure out how something works, just to figure out how it works. You know, no sort of, they don't attach, or they don't think about the why of why they're doing it. They think way more about like, oh, I just want to get it. And in this way, they are different than I am, for sure, because I often felt frustrated because I could never understand like the purpose of what I was doing, just that I had to do it. And when something doesn't make sense and then you also don't know why you're doing it, it gets very frustrating because you're kind of like just throwing shit at a wall. A lot of Big Four people actually used to play D1 or D2 sports. My own senior played D3 basketball on scholarship, and I think that also lends itself to the fact that the Big Four, because there's only 4 of them and because of their prestige, is a sort of competitive workplace. And the people that excel are hyper competitive. They really do want to do a good job, and they want to do it at the highest level, and they want to do it quickly. So they enjoy pressure, they enjoy the deadlines. And if you take nothing else from this, just know the real difference between public accounting and other types of accounting are just the deadlines, or just the fact that you are on, as the higher you go, you know, from like, you know, maybe a Grant Thornton going up to a Deloitte or a KPMG, are just that the deadlines are tighter. The deadlines are tighter and you have more clients. So if you're a person that excels under pressure, that looks for pressure to get shit done, this is a good environment for you, because you will constantly be under pressure and you will constantly need to be able to figure things out and get them done quickly. But above all that, I think the most important trait or tendency that I saw, and I asked about this a lot because, you know, I talked from everybody from partners all the way down to seniors, all the way down to my fellow associates, just to see like how are people surviving doing this day in and day out, because I understood from honestly a very, very early point that you're gonna burn out. Like this is a recipe for burnout. Long hours, short fused client, almost no help from the client in some aspects. Just the workload is a recipe for having terrible mental health and just being prone to burnout. So I was like, how do they avoid it? And at the end of the day, what I found out is that whether they want to admit it or not, and some of them do readily admit it, you have to identify with this job. You have to, in a large part, make this your life, make this work your life. And some people are able to do that. Some people want to do that. And I think if you enjoy the work that you're doing, identifying with your job, it is no problem at all. But if you do not identify with this job, if you do not identify as an auditor or as a tax preparer, the amount of work that you have to do will not enable you to have any other hobbies. So when I asked them, oh, well, like, what do you do during the weekend or what do you do at home? They were at a loss. And this was very surprising to me as a person who like does have, a couple of very strong hobbies, a couple of very strong passions that I do work on after work. They would be like, oh, I try to read, but I haven't read in 5 years. Or I watch TV, but I haven't had cable in years. I drink with my friends. And I don't mean to sound stereotypical, but a lot of the most common hobby that they had was just drinking by themselves or drinking with their friends. And that's worrisome, but that's not the scope of this video. But it's also very important to note, especially pre-pandemic, they definitely, happy hours at Big Fours are elite S-class. They are wonderful, and they are the main way that the firm tries to get you to network and build relationships with each other. But that does in turn make a sort of culture of alcohol. I think at the end of the day, the thing that bummed me out the worst about this was that there was no changing this. There was no changing the work environment. If you identify with the things that I've mentioned, you can work there. And if you don't, it's going to be, you have to adjust. There's no changing. There's only adjusting, because this is the machine. They are a big firm. They are constantly getting a new rotation of recruits and promotions, and it's a ladder system. So this is just the way the machine works, and it's so old that it's very hard to change. They may talk a good game about trying to redo the work-life balance or, trying to accommodate people's real lives, but if they haven't before, they don't really have an incentive to now, because the prestige of working at a Big Four, the prestige of working at a KPMG kind of outsizes any person who is like, dude, I don't think there's a healthy way to work. You can just leave. And most people just leave. Another thing that I think is super important to talk about, really in any firm, but keeping the scope to just the Big Four, is you need to prepare your mental health in order to work in this industry. And I truthfully do mean that. Like I had said before, this is the perfect cocktail of burning out. You have long hours and short deadlines. And then you have a culture that tells you that you already have long hours, but you need to work longer hours because the work just needs to be done. On top of that, you're not even making a lot of pay anyway. I started out with $62,000 a year for my starting salary as an associate auditor at KPMG. About regular for the region. Let's run some numbers. So my starting salary for KPMG was $62K a year. Now this was based on a 40-hour work week, which means I was making, I believe, $25-ish an hour. The calculation's right there. But when I then worked it backwards and then accounted for like just one pay period of busy season, which I went through about 2 or 3 busy seasons a year. 80-hour weeks, which I was regularly working at some point. This is how much I was now making. So then when you peep that, and then you understand that you're working this hard, you're working yourself like a dog, like a grunt, your mental health is not gonna, is no bueno at all. So you need to have a strong sense of self. You need to understand why you're doing what you're doing, because while you're doing this, you're probably more than likely also trying to study for the CPA exam, so then you can be a certified public accountant and then also be able to make more than 62K at some point in your life. So all of this is a perfect cocktail to just be working all the time, literally 24 hours, not getting any sleep. Busy season isn't a joke, but with that lack of time, basically everything in your life will start to suffer. Your relationships, both internal with yourself, that's mental health, suffer, but also externally. It's incredibly hard to date in the Big Four because you don't have free time in your schedule. You basically are just working. You're working minimum like one season out of the year, so 3 months you're out. And then because especially as an auditor, you'll get put on different clients with different year ends. You might get put onto a client with a 9/30 year end, which means a 9/30 year end, and then you also worked a client last year that had a 12/30 year end, which means that you might have worked all of the winter and now you have to work all of the spring to make for the 12/30 deadline. Which means when you have time to go out, when you have time to be with your friends. I stopped seeing almost the majority of my friends when I started working, and that was very tough for me because I hadn't expected that to happen. I thought the reason why I was getting a salary was so I could work a set amount of hours every day and be paid a dependable wage, not basically working shift work, but working overtime and not getting paid any overtime. It definitely changes your relationship dynamics with your family, with your friends. You will not, especially in the beginning as you're getting accustomed to stuff, you will not have as much free time. You have actually substantially less free time than you're used to having. And then just to end this on sort of like a very particular experience I had as a Black associate dealing with my white counterparts. So I was typing an email. Like a big thing I would get would be that my mannerisms were just automatically seen as more aggressive, or they were just all, I truly did feel like they were always just seen in a slightly worse light than if I were not Black. I vividly remember there's a true story that I had to start sending my emails through my manager first instead of to the client because my manager saw one of my emails and said, oh, this email is a little aggressive. Like, oh, here's a draft. Like he forwarded me a draft email and said like, it should sound, more like this. And I read that email and I was like, okay, cause I'm not, look, I don't want no trouble. I may be in Aries, but my moon Pisces, and I don't want no smoke. So I used that one and then I emailed it back to him. And then he was like, just make sure you send the emails through me first, and then I'll tell you if you can send them to the client. And I was like, this is wild, but maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm being too direct, or maybe I just don't get how to do emails. And then a couple weeks later, I was talking to one of my other friends at the firm who was also Black, actually also fellow Nigerian, and she told me the same thing had happened to her. And then I talked to another Black associate, and they said the same thing happened to him. Please don't break that bullshit into 2021. Don't bring that bullshit into 2021. Respectfully. And I started realizing, like, wow, I had not expected a real life microaggression to be happening to me at this job, in which, like, simply, I guess, because of the way that I write, and the way that I look, I was automatically perceived as being more aggressive when I asked the client for the things they were supposed to give me anyway that I shouldn't even have asked to ask for. And that definitely plays with your sense of self. Yeah, that definitely just plays with your sense of self. That was the first strike in my head about, like, I don't know if I'm comfortable in this work environment. The last thing that I do want to say about whether or not you should work for a Big Four is that if you do choose to work for one, it's worth it if you work it. Now, I've said all these things, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't be at the job that I am right now without the clout of working at KPMG. Working at a Big Four, especially coming out of university, is such a big resume booster, and you will learn a lot. I've learned so much from seeing so many different clients in so many different sectors. I've worked in healthcare, non-for-profit, defense, technology. I've seen a bunch of different industries and a bunch of different clients and seen how they do their work. And as an auditor, I've basically checked their work. I've had to understand what that business does and how they account for their books. And having to do that over and over and over again, very, very quickly, and just use my problem-solving skills did make me a better accountant and did make me a better critical thinker. This transferred very easily to not only my interviews when I left the job, but also to the job that I ended up working at. Because believe me, make senior, you don't gotta make senior. Stay there for a year, stay there for 2 years, network, get your options out there, and when you leave, you will discover that on the corporate side of accounting, you're just doing the one client. You're just working on one client forever. And it becomes a lot easier because you already know how to do reconciliations. You already know about journal entries. You already know about controls. You already know how it should be looking, which is why they want you. They want that asset in the fact that, like, oh, you worked at a very competitive place and you've gotten a lot of experience in a short amount of time. And we would like to now use that experience. So you should leverage your experience at a Big Four, at this training ground, at this plantation, to flip the bag and then make more. And using the clout that I got from KPMG and sort of the resume building experiences that I was able to gain through my employment there, I was able to easily get another job when I wanted to leave. And that job ended up paying me $70K to basically do the same thing that I'm doing now. And that's the important thing. It's not seeing as the Big Four as the end all be all, but using it as a stepping stone to get to a more comfortable place faster. I'm very much happier at where I am now. I realized I think I did really leave at the right time, even though we were in the Kung Fu Panda, because I had learned everything that I needed to learn to be successful at this job and pick it up relatively really quickly. So even though I may have had bad experiences at KPMG, I think overall I have to say the experience was a life-changing, was a good one, because I found out about myself. I found out what I need my work-life balance to be. I found out what I do and don't like about work. I found how much priority I put on my passions versus what I need to make an income. I learned a lot about myself, and more importantly, I did learn a lot about accounting. And not to mention the fact that, like, they also gave me the tools to be able to start my CPA journey. I was able to pass 2 of my exams through the fact that you get free Becker from working at KPMG, and that was super duper helpful. And to the point of sort of the culture, I did make friends. I have friends that I think I hope to be friends with for a long time through our sort of shared trauma of going through busy season, of being in the trenches together. Working in the Big Four or public accounting in general is an incredible opportunity where you will learn a lot about yourself and the accounting industry at large. But as a Black person, it's lonely. It can be mentally exhausting, and in the long run, you really do have to want this life. There isn't a lot to get used to. How you feel after your first 1 or 2 busy season will probably be how you feel about busy season in general. But if you pay attention, if you network, and if you try as hard as you can to maintain your mental stability, working at a Big Four is an amazing career opportunity, and after you leave, your opportunities are as wide as the sky. So in the end, I'm truly grateful for the opportunity and for the experience, and I wish you all the best in your decision to pursue a Big Four career or not. If you guys have any other questions, you can hit me in the comments below. I can put my LinkedIn or my email in the comments. I do enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. I realize that I don't talk a lot about my day job, but it is what I do. I am an accountant. And I do think that my experience, especially coupled with the fact that accountancy isn't my life. And I think it's important to have that sort of perspective about people that don't make their entire day job their identity, especially in finance or in the accounting world. It's an important perspective to have. And if you guys need any advice or have any other questions, please feel free to talk to me in the comments below. Talk to me on Instagram at that's Tayo. And as always, I hope that you be kind and always be you. I'll see you guys.